The Way is a movie about a group of pilgrims taking part in one of the most ancient and sacred pilgrimage routes that still exists today. The Camino de Santiago is a journey of about 800 kilometers through French and Spanish countryside. People of all types and religions supposedly take the route for different reasons, and it's still popular even to this day. In the movie, the main character is partaking in the journey because of a tragedy in his life. Tom Avery is a successful American living in California, at odds with his adult son's view on life as opposed to his own. But when Daniel is killed by a storm hitting the trail, Tom must travel to France to pick up his son's pack and remains. Tom decides to cremate Daniel and then take his ashes across the Camino, undertaking a journey that he doesn't fully understand until he reaches the end. Nor does he foresee what happens along the way. This is an interesting film, to be sure, but what makes it even more interesting for me, at least, is the story behind the production. The film's directed by Emilio Estevez and stars his father, Martin Sheen. Estevez is one of those actors whom I grew to like after his popularity had faded away. While I obviously loved watching the Young Guns films, as well as The Outsiders, I didn't necessarily like most of his more famous works, like St. Elmo's Fire or Mighty Ducks. But his directorial stuff is another matter. As many of you remember, I listed The War at Home as one of the most underrated films of the 90s, and while The Way isn't quite as enthralling, it's definitely got the same kind of heart. In both films, Sheen and Estevez imitate reality by playing father and son on screen, and the film really feels like a family project, especially since the journey was inspired by Estevez's own son making the journey, as well as being a dedication to Estevez's grandfather. The movie follows Tom undertaking his journey. On the way, he meets Joost, a boisterous and talkative Dutchman aiming to lose some weight, played by Yorick Van Wageningen. There's also Sarah, a bitter Canadian woman trying to quit smoking, played by Deborah Kara Unger. And then there's Jack, an even more talkative Irish writer, played with gusto by James Nesbitt. All four of these characters are interesting to watch as they interact together, and while their differences do lead them to clash with one another, a bond inevitably grows between them. That's the thing about this movie. There aren't any huge surprise twists and turns, nor is the film trying to be unlike any other film before it. It tells a simple tale of a man's physical and emotional journey to cope with his son's death. Martin Sheen does a great job under Estevez's direction, and the others have some great moments in the film as well. But while it is about a spiritual journey that's been done for 1,000 years, the story still feels a bit too whimsical at times. But maybe I'm being too cynical for the movie. On a lighter note, the story and the performances do grow on you. The landscapes are obviously gorgeous to look at, and altogether, I'd recommend checking this one out. Now, I'm not sure if, after watching this film, that I would want to take the journey myself, but I'm sure some people will indeed be inspired to make the pilgrimage, regardless of religion or lack of same.
Seem to understand it, she wants to know where the boy's been. I'd have to be some kind of natural born fool to wanna walk on the road.